Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, October 22nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Iowa game is today, the game against Michigan in 35 days. We are already in week 8 of the college football season. So if you've not started already getting the feeling of dread that accompanies the realization that we're in the home stretch of the regular season and you're not that far from the college football offseason, well, you better get going on that soon. We are just a week away from the first release of the college football playoff rankings. So do make sure you really enjoy the games today, even the ones involving Iowa. After today, there are only 5 weeks of regular season left. So today we're going to be talking about some of the games you should enjoy today, other than Ohio State and Iowa. I guess today is Tony Gerdeman. He and I will be enjoying the Ohio State-Iowa game together a little later on. But today, right now, we're talking about some other ones. So Tony, thanks for being here.
Tom, thank you for having me. I was incredibly pleased when my assistant had mentioned that you had called and wanted me to get scheduled for the show. So I made some moves. I made some plans. I canceled a vacation, and here I am.
Well, I'm so glad I was able to have my people talk to your people and make this finally make this happen.
You called, and you know it. My assistant said so.
All right. So starting at noon, did your assistant see this coming? Unbeaten Syracuse, ACC showdown between unbeaten Clemson and unbeaten Syracuse. Like what? It has felt like the clock was about to strike midnight in the Orange for just weeks now, and they just kind of keep on winning. And there's always like but North Carolina State's playing without its quarterback. Yeah, but they just kind of keep winning. I feel like this is the theme of this week. There's always a theme of the week, and this is the week that it feels like the clock's going to strike midnight in a few of these kind of unlikely unbeaten teams. Syracuse is one of them. They're close to a 2-touchdown underdog. Clemson's maybe sort of starting to put things together. What do you see happening here?
Yeah, I'm with you. This is one where there's no reason Clemson should give up. Like there's no missing a quarterback or this guy's injured. Like they've got enough pieces around where there's no special circumstance for a Syracuse win. And this being in Clemson, like we've seen some close games between these two teams, but I don't know that it's going to be this week. And even with the noon start, I think everybody will still be fired up. And Clemson is now, they've been written off, except, it's hard to be written off when you're still undefeated. You're very much in the title picture. And some teams ahead of you are going to be playing each other and knocking each other out. And you're just going to keep rising and rising. And when you look at what they've got to do yet in the ACC, they are very, very much in this picture. And, this is their last ranked opponent, basically. And that may be true even when they play the ACC championship game.
Yeah, the ACC Coastal, stop me if you've heard this before, but the ACC Coastal is a little bit of a mess this year. I mean, we'll see. Maybe North Carolina really keeps going. Maybe that's another one where I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop on them. Another team, boy, I am like Bobby Bad vibes here today. So sorry to all the unbeaten teams who I'm, really, sort of speaking into existence some bad things happening this weekend. But one of those teams that feels like their luck has been able to reach right on the cusp of running out for weeks. Unbeaten UCLA visiting Oregon. UCLA had some, kind of unimpressive performances in the non-conference. They've been pretty good in the Pac-12. And if you stopped watching Oregon football after they got demolished by Georgia, this is not the same team that you saw play on Labor Day weekend. They lost 49-3 to Georgia, and then they've kind of pulled it together, and they look like a probably Pac-12 championship game kind of team. Remember, they got rid of the divisions for the Pac-12 championship game this year, so it could be Oregon and Washington, or UCLA and Utah, or whatever in the Pac-12 championship game this year. So, Ducks a 6-point favorite against unbeaten UCLA. Is this another one where we see the ranks of the unbeaten fall by yet another?
This is going to be interesting because we've seen UCLA the last couple of weeks beat Washington and beat Utah, both ranked opponents, but both of those games were in UCLA. And once you're playing in front of that UCLA home crowd, anything can happen. They're going to be fired up. And now they actually have to go to one of the rare places in the Pac-12 that is an environment. And so you do that at Oregon. Oregon, as you said, the early loss to Georgia, they've been ignored. But, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, UCLA quarterback, is like 5th in the nation in pass efficiency. They're scoring. Zach Charbonnet, former Michigan running back, is running the ball well. But this is where we find out. And Oregon's what, a 6-point favorite, and they've not had the best schedule. And you look at the last couple of weeks, Stanford and Arizona. I don't know how much of a test they've had going into that, but they have played Georgia, and they know what that felt like. And then they destroyed BYU, and we still thought BYU was good. I think this is going to be the best team they've faced since Georgia. And so I guess I'm going to go with Autzen Stadium more than anything else. I think that's really what will decide it for me. But, I mean, I've been wrong about UCLA about 3 times this season.
Yeah, they have been. I think I said to you off the air at one point earlier in the season, like, if I had to bet on one place for Chip Kelly to be in 2023, it was, special advisor to Ryan Day, so on the analyst staff at Ohio State or something, because I didn't think he was going to make it through the year, and he might make it to the Pac-12 championship game if they can get through this. You mentioned Autzen Stadium. One of the interesting angles here, anyway, is the only place UCLA has played on the road this year is Colorado, and their crowds at home have not been tremendous. So going to Autzen, that is going to be a level of crowd noise that they have really not seen this year, because Colorado has not been very good at all this year and had not a particularly lively atmosphere at Folsom Field this year. So yeah, that's interesting to watch. Zach Charbonnet, man, put Zach Charbonnet on the Michigan team, and he's not supplanting Blake Corum, but man, that would be a pretty good duo of running backs. Not that Donovan Edwards has been bad, but yeah, he is. You put Xavier Worthy and Zach Charbonnet on that Michigan team this year, and they could have had both of them on this team. That would be maybe an even more interesting Ohio State Michigan game coming up in a month or so. Out in the Big Ten West this weekend, this is another weird one. We've been talking about, Purdue or Illinois really has a pretty good chance of making the Big Ten championship game. This week, the Boilermakers playing at Wisconsin. Their schedule the next couple of weeks is, I think in 3 weeks, we're going to know whether, what the deal is with Purdue. They have at Wisconsin this week. They're off the next weekend, home for Iowa, at Illinois. So by, the end of the day, November 12th, we probably know if they win the next 3 games, they're probably going to Indianapolis, because they'd have the tiebreaker over pretty much everyone. Their only loss in conference was week 1 against Penn State in the Joe Buck Bowl on that Thursday night. So there are a couple of questions here. Is Purdue really going to do this thing? Or, with Jim Leonard now in charge at Wisconsin, is Wisconsin going to look like more like Wisconsin than they have so far this year?
I defy anybody to break this game down accurately and tell me exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to happen, because I don't know that anybody can. And you look at Purdue's season, their 2 losses, 35-31 to Penn State, as you mentioned, start of the season, and then at Syracuse, 32-29. That's number 14 Syracuse. And this is the Boilers have won at Minnesota, they've won at Maryland. But then it's like, and then Nebraska comes to town and you have to hold on for a 6-point win. Then you look at Wisconsin and they've got 3 losses, and you feel like it should be Purdue. And then if somebody comes in and says, yeah, but Wisconsin right now, they're feeling good. They've got some momentum back, and you're like, yeah, I mean, you're right. And then if somebody says, yeah, but I think Purdue's going to win it. And I could be like, yeah, but it's Purdue. It's on the road. Are you sure? And there's really no good arguments here for or against any of it. And it's one of those things where actually the arguments are only for against everything. When you have 2 teams where you just have no idea. And it's like any outcome from this game would not be a surprise. Like 42-7 Purdue. Would you be shocked by that? I don't think so, because Purdue can score and Wisconsin can give up points. And the Big Ten West is it's random scores out of a party hat.
It feels like a bunch of 8-4 teams where someone is going to have to go 10-2 or 9-3, because someone has to win these games. So not everyone is going to go just 500 in conference. So yeah, it is a real weird division where, Purdue, Illinois, other than Northwestern, it's like pretty much anyone out there could theoretically win that division and play in Indianapolis. Speaking of conferences that need to do away with two divisional champs in the conference championship game, all right, Big Ten, there you go. It'll happen eventually, not soon enough. Another team that is an underdog, much like UCLA, that is unbeaten, but an underdog this weekend. Ole Miss is actually getting a couple points playing LSU. This is another one where, how confident are you that you can, you really have a sense for what's going to happen here? Because Ole Miss seems like they've got a good offense, not much defense. LSU had the weird loss to Florida State at the beginning of the year. They lost a couple offensive linemen against Tennessee and had kind of a non-representative game. Just got smoked by Tennessee, but I'm not sure how much to really read into that. Help me. You were useless on the Purdue-Wisconsin game, so that's fine. Yeah. Help me make sense of this one. What's going to happen here?
I don't know, Tom. I don't know. What I do know, I was impressed by what LSU was able to do again at Florida. I wasn't expecting it to be that emphatic. And when you're scoring 45 points, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, is running the ball, he's throwing the ball. And to me, if Ole Miss wants to get in a shootout, I don't know that they have the offense this year to do that. And that won't stop Lane Kiffin from doing it. But I feel like LSU's defense will get more stops than Ole Miss's defense will. So I think this is the first loss of the season for Ole Miss. But also, I think LSU is a program to be wary of coming off of a big win when they start feeling themselves and they start getting confident and they get cocky. Brian Kelly can be victim to that as well, where, yes, I told you, look at the glory of us. And then, boom, Ole Miss runs for 400 yards on you. And you're like, well, this was unexpected.
Now I've got to spend Sunday with my family. I feel like Ole Miss is 7-0 and about to finish like 9-3. That just is sort of the vibe I get from them right now. It's about to, they've kind of been doing it with a little bit of smoke and mirrors right now, and it feels they've also had a very, very backloaded schedule. So they're about to hit the bumpy part of the schedule. So last one I wanted to talk to you about, Michigan is off, but Ohio State's next opponent, Penn State, hosting Minnesota for the whiteout game. It's been kind of weird not being in State College for the whiteout game in a year when Ohio State visits State College. Lions favored by only 4.5, and these are two teams who are not where you really were expecting them to be a couple weeks ago. We talked about Penn State as potentially, could Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State all split their round robin of games. We talked about Minnesota potentially being the favorite in the West as recently as 3 weeks ago or so, and now Minnesota's kind of fallen on its butt. Penn State got their clocks cleaned in Ann Arbor last weekend. What happens here? I mean, it feels like we always hear about the whiteout being worth 7 to 10 points. Penn State's only favored by 4.5. That seems like that's not that great, and you wonder how enthusiastic the whiteout will be this year with Minnesota and coming off a loss to Michigan.
How many points is a defense that can't stop a running game worth? And you saw Michigan rush for over 400 yards last week against Penn State, and so did PJ Fleck. And you've got Mohamed Ibrahim back. He rushed for 127 yards on 15 carries against Illinois last week, which is pretty darn good. And so I'm expecting a season high carries for him as long as he's able to handle it with his health. And I wouldn't be shocked for like 30 carries, 180 yards, and Minnesota trying to just they win a time of possession battle, but it equates to like a 23-20 type of game. I believe Sean Clifford is going to be able to go in this game. Some would say sadly, others would say sadly, but I think Minnesota is going to run the ball, and then it's just a matter of, is Tanner Morgan going to be able to complete like the 3rd and 4 pass, something like that. So I won't be surprised to see Minnesota win, but I'm going to go with James Franklin on a bounce back.
Okay, so hypothetically, if Minnesota wins and Penn State's coming into the Ohio State game on a 2-game losing streak, what 3-point scoring margin is Ohio State going to win next week by? Is it 20-17 or 38-35 with Penn State coming in a two-game losing streak? Because that feels if Penn State loses this weekend, that will feel the most inevitable. Ohio State's favored by 23 points, and then they win by a field goal. That just feels so inevitable if that's how that shakes out.
I decline to answer that question, but I would say 38-35, but I don't know how the 35 is getting there. So maybe the 20-17.
Yeah, it is. We'll see how the Minnesota game goes for Penn State. But yeah, that is that. I feel like I've gone to just enough games in State College where Ohio State fans come in extremely confident, and then the game starts, and it's like, oh no, this is not how this is supposed to go. So yeah, we'll get to the Penn State game next weekend. Ohio State plays Iowa at noon today. We will have complete pregame coverage at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and then of course after the game, plenty of post-game coverage as well. Our usual post-game show will kick off right as the clock hits 0. Mark Givler and Devin Radcliffe will have the kind of immediate reaction. We'll have post-game interviews with Ohio State players and coaches, perhaps with Iowa players and coaches if time permits. And then, of course, the usual post-game Buckeye Weekly instant reaction show as well. So lots of great stuff coming your way later today at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle and, of course, at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. Enjoy the football. We'll talk to you a little later on.